Jennifer, hey, congratulations on your new documentary, Family Tree.
Thank you. Thank you.
More of a congratulations is being featured at this year's hot dogs. How does it feel for you about this?
It's huge. I'm so excited to be here. I've never had a film at Hot Docs before. This is my first film as a director, but as a producer, I've worked in other projects. So it's very exciting to be at the biggest documentary festival in North America.
Most excellent. Well, what we have to ask is, what actually sparked you to do this documentary in the first place for Family Tree?
So, as I've shared with some other folks, I really, I spent 20 years living in New York, after having grown up in, communities that were not that different than sort of what you see in Family Tree, in the exurbs, in sort of rural environments. I lived in Alaska for most of my teen years and early 20s. And, I grew to want to connect back to the nature that shaped me as I was a young person growing up. And I always had a sense of the shift in the environment and the way that things were changing. I always felt very connected and in touch with what I was seeing and around me. And I really wanted to make something that honored that connection, and also brought me closer. So Family Tree was sort of a wonderful way for me to do that.
Well, then tell us about the two families that you found for your documentary. How did you discover them, and how did you convince them to be a part of this project?
Yeah, so I worked with a wonderful researcher, Nadine Nator. She's worked on a number of other great projects. RBG, I think, is one of the larger ones she's done. And, we talked about trying to work on an environmental story also within the intersection of African-American life and African-American stories. And I think it's something that doesn't, people don't necessarily think about Black Americans when they think about environmentalism, right? Or stewardship, let me put it that way. So, she started to look and see, what's out there, and discovered SFLR, which is the Sustainable Forestry and African American Land Retention Project. It is a network of 8 states from Texas to Virginia. And they are, organizations within each state that facilitate sustainable forestry for African American landowners. So it seemed like it was the perfect, intersection. And talking with them, she, was looking for families. We want to work with families that are willing to talk about their journeys towards sustainable forestry and the challenges as well as the triumphs. And the Jeffreys and a few other families were on the initial sort of list. And I wanted to focus in on one state. I felt like, there's a really great way to augment and sort of build out storytelling when it's place-based, when you can sort of focus on one community. North Carolina is larger than one community, but within the network of states. So, that allowed me to explore North Carolina as a character of its own in the film. And so we were able to find the Williams family at 40 Acres, who are sort of a more well-known landowner family in the landowner community. And it was a great contrast between them and then the Jeffreys, who were sort of starting out on their journey.
So, what was the criteria to select these families? You wanted one with experience and one that was actually starting off, but there must have been a lot of other families that were also in the mix for consideration. Am I correct?
Yeah, what we were looking for were families that could sort of illuminate some different types of themes, right? So, some of the challenges within sustainable forestry are, how do you, the very clear, like, how do you pass it down? And when you do have something and when it is established, ensuring the continuation through the family line. And so that's sort of what the Williams family represents. You know, they've had their land in the family for 100 years. So there's a deep and rich legacy there. With the Jeffreys, we were really, we were kind of looking for a family that, you know, was looking for the opportunities and the resources and often the stuff that, you know, just to get started, a lot of families don't even know exist for them. So, you know, how do you get access to the resources, to credit, to capital, all those kinds of things. So each family sort of represents those two themes. But beyond that, I think it was really my nose, you know, like I just, there was something about each family, I will say, on a personal level, you know, they remind me of my own family, and sort of some of my own family dynamics. You know, the families for me, they're really stories about fatherhood and Black men and Black masculinity. And I really wanted to explore that through these two different father figures, and who both sort of remind me of my own father, who passed away some many years ago now, at different stages of his life. So yeah, I think those were the things that really drew me to those families. And I think because of that, because there was a really deep emotional connection, on just from their story, we were able to build an emotional connection. And I think that's why you see the vulnerability and the openness and what you do see on camera with the two of them.
So for you, Jennifer, at which point during the production you discovered the expansive story of the family structure involvement instead of just environmentalism?
So I was sort of looking for that, right? You know, I come out of many years of working in the, you know, what we call the social impact world, the social impact producing. And I understood over some time that the storytelling needed to evolve. That, you know, a lot of us oftentimes were kind of preaching to the choir, people who really already believed in the thing or really cared about the thing. And I wanted to get beyond sort of the people who might be most interested in forestry or environmentalism, and really try to figure out, how do we reach general audiences? And I know, like everyone says, you know, there's no such thing as general audiences, but you know, I felt like a family dramedy, basically, which I think is what our film is a kind of genre that people know and they're connected to and they get. So, you know, I kind of went into it with that desire to find a hook or an element that could actually draw in people that may not necessarily care about forestry or environmentalism. Yeah.
Then address the events that you were invited to these family functions, or these, you know, family gatherings, or just small you know fam family dynamics that you managed
Mhm.
to capture.
Yeah. So I structurally, you know, we shot the film over, I think, a 9-month period. And we with I think something like 7 visits over 9 months, maybe 8, I can't remember exactly, like August to April, maybe. You can do the math. And I wanted to sort of structure the film around this idea of the life cycle of a tree, you know, so a year, you know, each 4 seasons. I also wanted to tie African American sort of folkways and family traditions to those seasons. You know, I grew up, you know, in the Black community in America. The cookout is a huge thing. Oftentimes it's connected to, you know, a family reunion. Thanksgiving is always big. It's big for lots of families, but I feel like there's a particular, I don't know, way that we do it. And so I wanted to sort of tap into these different kind of family events and anchor them and connect them um, to the land and to the environment, and have people understand that we're part of that. That's a part of our regular sort of process as Black people and Black families. And you know, the Jeffreys were game. They were basically like, we have this beautiful, you know, yearly, we have this cookout. It honors the grandmother, Nellie Newby, who passed the land down to them. I think they're very keen on honoring their ancestors, and you know, so they invited us to come to the cookout. And you know, I had to do some work. I had to really talk to some of the elders. You know, the Jeffrey sisters were yes, let's do it. But some of the other elders were like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you trying to film our family? And what is this about? And so I really had to kind of convince them that, you know, this is going to be a story about your family, that's going to honor your family, that's going to show people and model to people how to do this, how to create these family bonds so that you can pass things down and keep this intergenerational sustainable process going. And the Williams, they offered it up. They were really excited about the idea of us coming to film their Thanksgiving. They have these sort of annual events where they, you know, you see in the film, they have actual activities that everybody participates in. That's a regular thing. They didn't just do that for us, you know. So I mean, so it was very cool to sort of see each family and how they really how they engaged in keeping the family together. And that's something I wanted to show people, that like, you know, we are actively doing things as Black Americans to sustain our families, to celebrate our families. And so, you know, that's sort of how we came to doing those two big events. And then the other small stuff, you know, it just happened over time as we were developing a relationship. You know, the thing is, because I kept coming back, you know, I came every month for months, you know, because I kept doing that. They knew I was invested, and that I really cared about their families, and I really wanted to know who they were as people. And I think that's what allowed, you know, me the space to go deeper with them, which made them feel comfortable to be more vulnerable and show these very intimate moments.
So how did you balance all these stories? You have a lot of characters
Uh-huh.
in this
Uh-huh.
film. So how do you want to balance everyone's stories, and not only that, to also balance between, you know, black family culture with the environmentalism, the two major themes of your film.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I think you see in the storytelling, there's some things that I try to do to help the audience, to key in the audience to the each character, and to let them know, you know. So in the opening sequence, we have that it's sort of a retro, maybe like 70s, 80s style, you know, something from Dallas or Dynasty or Little House on the Prairie, where you see everybody's names show up. And that's meant to sort of help people, help establish who the characters are. But then we go back, you know, several times. You kind of get reintroduced to people a few times. You see their names a few times. You know, that was all meant to sort of help people keep track of everything. I didn't initially know there were going to be this many people in the film. I knew, you know, we sort of had Tyrone and Edna, and then Nikki and Natalie. But, you know, again, as things broadened, and I knew it was going to be a bigger family story for each side, you know, we really worked on, you know, figuring out ways to just drop in key moments in the film where you could get a little bit of a taste of each person's personality. You know, someone who I really who you don't hear a lot from, but I feel like you really get to know him, is Tyrone, the youngest son in the Williams family. The first time you see him, you know, he's putting on the vest and he's like, I hate this vest, you know, and this is like my 8 to 5, you know, so you get the sense of, you know, he's working class, he's you know, he's kind of ornery a little bit. The next time you see him, you know, he's playing the trumpet kind of off on his own. When he's at the Thanksgiving holiday, he sort of does that funny wave in the back. You know, there's something about him that's very much sort of thumbing the nose at this sort of you know, high class sort of idea, you know. And I think that comes through in just these few little moments, right? So I think it's like figuring out how to distilled down to the essence of what you see of someone, and just looking for a few moments that help develop that characterization so that the audience can really connect and get and feel like they know something about that person at the end.
So you personally, as a New Yorker, what kind of discovery did you make as you are, how can you say, filming in North Carolina, practically in the woods?
Yeah, so I'm now in Angelino. I've been in Los Angeles for about 5.5 years now. I love New York, but that I think that chapter of my life is behind me. I need to be in a city, but still in a more natural environment. Um, you asked what did I learn or what was surprising
Yeah,
in
what was the discovery for you? Spending time out there.
um I think it was the diversity of the foliage and of the greenery and everything out there. I live in, this is so like cliche, but I live in Hollywood. And where I live, there's just so much, the diversity of trees and plants and everything. You kind of get like, well, this is the most amazing thing in the world. There's nothing like it. But being in North Carolina, I suddenly began to realize, oh, wait, that's here too. It's different, but there's still this richness and variety in what's happening in wildlife and the green spaces and trees. And I that was surprising, and I wanted to try to bring that to the fore in this film so people could sort of see, you know, the richness of that experience of being in North Carolina, and to really give people a different sense of like the rural Black experience. I think that it doesn't, I don't know. I mean, I don't know very many other stories that really look at Black rural life in the same way that mine does. Um, that isn't about, the civil rights movement from 40 years ago. You know what I mean? So that is, those were surprises for me, and I wanted to give that to the audience as well.
That is true. There's quite a distinguishment between, rural blacks and urban blacks, culture in this case. And and at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned this is your first film as a director. You produced before. Could you tell us what was that experience like, and why you made that decision to go behind the camera?
Um, oh, it's so funny, not that I ever didn't understand or disbelieved directors, but there's just such a different kind of connection to a film when you're directing it. And when the story is really springing from your brain and you're birthing it and bringing it to life, um the sensitivities around everything, are so different. I felt so connected to them, and the responsibility that I had to get the characterizations right, to make sure that um it was authentic to who they were, and I was showing people, even if it wasn't necessarily the best aspects of them, or like more challenging aspects of their personalities, that it was still authentic and true, and wanting to do people justice. I think that was such a different kind of experience, and you feel very vulnerable when you're doing it. I made the decision to shift, I think, because for a few reasons. I wanted to see a different kind of storytelling about Black life. I've been frustrated, frankly, over the last 5 to 6 years of the kinds of stories that continue to come out about African Americans. And, not that these things aren't important for people to know, but I feel like, you know, there's a lot of racism porn and a lot of trauma porn out there, and I wanted people to sort of see that that is not the totality of who we are or our experience. And that, in fact, for most of us, we're not even really thinking about that stuff like on a day-to-day basis. We have lives outside of the oppressive structures that we've had to deal with as Americans. And so that sort of, I didn't want to dismiss those things, and I sort of weave a little bit of those elements into the film to contextualize. But what I really wanted to do was to, create fully human characterizations of Black people outside of those sort of dynamics, and possibly, open a way in for people into the story in a different kind of way. Because I think there's so much polarization and there's so much going on in the United States around these issues. And I feel like we just have to try something different. And so we can connect to people, and people can see our experience and who we are in a different kind of way.
Sounds like you're going to do this again.
I hope so. If someone buys this film, knock knock on wood, hot dogs please, or gives me money to make another one, I would love to do that. Yeah.
Most excellent. Well, Jennifer, let me wrap it up with one last question. As audiences have a chance to watch a family tree, what is the one most important take you hope they walk away with after viewing your film?
Um, Hope, a sense of hope that the climate doom that we all on a subtle way, I think, experience and feel, that there's a way through that and a way beyond that. And as individual people, we can actually do something, right here, right in our property, right with our families. That work can be done. We don't have to wait for a government to do something. We don't have to wait for, Exxon to change it. We don't have to do any of that. I mean, those things do need to happen, but the things that we do have control over are right in front of us. And I want people to feel the sense that they can do something meaningful, and that it's going to improve their lives if they do that work. These families, their family bonds are stronger, their economic fortunes are better. So they're real reasons to sort of make the shift toward sustainability. And I hope that people feel that.
Most excellent. Well, Jennifer, thank you very much for carrying this conversation about Family Tree. Everyone should check it out at Hot Docs. This is a feel-good, positive family story that everyone should watch. So thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.